Hello, everyone. Does that work? I don't think so. Yeah, so welcome, everyone. Software Mention webinar. This is our fourth webinar. My name is Christoph Magera, and here with us today is Jakub Adamczyk, who works at Software Mention. He's one of our React Native experts. And yeah, I'm really excited about this webinar because it actually touches a really important topic, which is deep linking. Something that really everyone has to struggle with at some point when building and deploying React Native apps. And there are many different steps that you may get wrong when setting up deep linking. So starting from the setup and then handling that within the app, integrating with some third-party services. So all of that will be explained today. I'm really happy about this. So I'm sure that this content of today's webinar is going to be useful to many of you. So I'm not going to be talking anymore, and we'll just pass the voice to Jakub. So just give him like a round of virtual applause on the chat box, and let's get started. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Let me just share my presentation. Everyone, in the Blinking React Native webinar, I will give you a general overview of it. My name is Jakub Adamczyk. I'm a software engineer at Software Mention. I work full-time on mobile apps, part-time as React Native open source contributor, and you can find me on Twitter and GitHub under handle visible on the screen. Today's topic is deep linking. I will tell you what it is. I will try to show some use cases of it. I will try to briefly guide you through deep link setup on Android, iOS, and JavaScript. I will give you an example on how to handle deep linking in JavaScript. So how to go from links flowing into your app to actually guiding user to the specific screen you want to show them. Oh no. I will try to also show you some additional linking services you might encounter. And lastly, I will try to give you a note on security of deep links, what not to do, basically. So let's start with what is a deep link. I think everyone is using deep linking daily in some form. We are sending each other links to content all over the internet all the time, like links to YouTube videos, links to Twitter posts, memes, etc. The list goes on, really. So a deep link basically is a link that takes you to some kind of content. As I probably mentioned, most web links are deep links. And first example, it will be like a counter example. Let's take softwaremention.com domain. Formally, this is not a deep link because this is the overall page. Going further, softwaremention.com/academy. This is a deep link. We are guiding the user to some kind of content, which in this case is Academy or Software Mention Academy. You can have a link like softwarementionacademy.com/academy and some query parameters. This is also a valid deep link. You can take advantage of query parameters as well. Now that we've mentioned deep links in the web, let's start talking about today's topic, deep links in mobile apps. Their role is more or less the same as in the web. They just link to screens in your native app, your mobile app, instead of web page. Typical link for mobile app looks a bit different, but the functionality is more or less the same. One note though, you can also use web URLs to link to your mobile app, but more on that later. And as I experienced it, term deep linking in mobile context is usually used for all the links, not only those with specified path leading somewhere else than a home screen. First off, I would like to show you how a typical classic mobile app deep link is constructed. So my examples will be based on an application that doesn't exist, but you can imagine it existed. Imagine there was an application for Software Mention Academy. It will have a homepage with announcements, for example, like today's webinar. It will have a screen with a list of webinars, screen to play specific webinar, and you probably get the idea. So such a deep link for such an app would start with a URI scheme. You can create your own URI scheme or create a URI scheme that is very popular, or take someone else's URI scheme, but mostly you create your own. For our app, we would like to have, for example, abbreviation of Software Mention Academy. And it starts with SWM Academy : // and after that you can possibly add anything you want, but I advise you to stick to how it works in the web and how you construct links in the web. So after that, you can have some arbitrary link path, for example, webinars. You can nest those link paths or add path parameters, and as well, you can add query parameters. To give you some examples of that, we've got following the same example application that I mentioned. You can have a homepage link. It will be just the URI scheme. You can have a link to a list of webinars. That will be Software Academy : / webinars. You can have a link to concrete webinar, taking advantage of path parameter. So Software Academy : / webinars / deep linking. That would be today's webinar. And you can have, if we had a long list of webinars, example 1 year ahead of us, list of webinars, you can open list of webinars with a search term pre-filled. So you can, for that, you can take advantage of query parameters and pass a search term, for example, styling. One thing to note, you can have two applications installed that subscribe to the same URL scheme, and the behavior differs between Android and iOS. So what Android does is Android asks you, lets you choose the app you want to open, and you can also choose the default one. On the picture, you can see example with opening web URLs. Whereas on iOS chooses it for you. Pre-iOS 11, as far as I know, it was random. After iOS 11, Apple implemented it so that the first application that was installed and that registers for that URI scheme is opened the first. Like I mentioned before, apart from supporting links with custom URI prefix, URI scheme, you can open your applications with web links. It is usually a safer method and probably a better one, but it requires some additional setup and you might end up with some quirks. So basically, you have your website link, like softwaremation.com, and you will be linked to a web page or a mobile app, depending whether the user has the app installed. You need to have the same paths on web and mobile because you don't want to confuse your users. And to give you an example or visualize how it works, a user clicks a link if the app is installed. User has the mobile app opened to a screen you want it to open. If user don't have the app installed, you can navigate. The user is navigated to a web page. Okay. So Android and iOS both implement this system. On iOS, it's called universal links, and on Android, the respective system is app links. Overall, iOS is safer because it requires verification that you actually own the domain, but it has several quirks. Android is overall simpler and probably easier to set up. Speaking of iOS quirks, you might encounter something like called in the community phantom banner in Safari. So to give you an example, I took Airbnb as an example here. You have installed Airbnb app on your mobile device, on your iPhone, and you opened Airbnb.com in the Safari browser. You will be presented with a banner that looks like in the picture that will prompt you to open this link in the application you have installed instead of surfing it or searching it, viewing it on the web. Apart from that, you will be presented, after you open the app, you will be presented with a breadcrumb in the top right corner. I'm not sure if in the current iOS version it is still existent, but at least it was before. After you click this breadcrumb in top right corner, you will be redirected to the website instead of mobile app. And iOS will remember that you wanted to view this page screen in the web instead of mobile app, And next time you click this link, you will be immediately directed to the website. Same happens when you manually open in Safari. This is the same behavior. When you manually open it in the web, iOS will remember that. Fortunately enough, this can be overridden in your settings. So we can revert the old behavior, so opening in mobile apps in settings. Okay, now I would like to show you some deep linking use cases. Some are more popular ones. I think this is important to get advantage of the skills that we just discussed. So first one, you can link from within the application itself. You can use React Native code like linking open URL, and it will basically open this URL. You can link to your own app, but you can also link to other apps. So if you have like two applications that should ideally work together, you can open the another one to specific page with a deep link. And I think the latter is more popular and it's pretty handy. You can also link from web pages. You can embed deep links on a web page and redirect users to the native app if they have one. This is probably less popular, but there is a possibility for that. A very popular use case is linking from social media posts. You can run campaigns and direct users straight to the app. With help of additional services, you can actually try to make potential users install the app and go to the content afterwards. I will cover that later. And it's called deferred deep linking. And links in campaigns or social media posts is a very popular use case. Apart from that, you can embed deep links in your push notifications. The best example of that is in a messaging app, I think. You get a message from someone you know. You get a heads-up notification. After you click that, you are immediately directed to conversation with that person. Apart from that messaging app example, you can also run info campaigns for your users to improve their engagement and similar stuff. So when they click it, they open the app in the specific place that the campaign is about. If you manually send push notifications, check how to add links to them, because there are differences between platforms. One of the platforms, as far as I remember, sends them just as a field in the payload. So you have the precursors here. Another popular one is the links in emails. Imagine you have a newsletter with new features for your app, and you embed a deep link to that feature. This is a risky one because the user can have an old version. So maybe that's not the best example, but you can have an arbitrary campaign and you want the users to open your app right away. And it will open for them if they have it installed. If you take advantage of additional services, you can as well make the users install the app. Very common pattern, at least I think very common, is using deep links to redirect back to the app after authorization with protocol like OAuth 2. I personally use it with a service called Auth0. I'm not sure if this is the same protocol, but it took advantage of deep linking. Special code was passed to the application, and then it was exchanged for a token. Keep in mind that you shouldn't pass any vulnerable data through deep links. So do not pass user access tokens as a query parameter. Okay, we know what it is, how to use it. I would like to now tell you how to set up deep links for your mobile app. Most of this information is based on information you can easily find on the internet. So you don't have to meticulously take notes, just listen. You can search that on your own. I will start with React Native or JavaScript, part of your code base. So in React Native, when the app is running, links are sent to React Native in form of events, and you can subscribe to them using linking.addEventListener methods. And you are subscribing to URL events, and with the callback, you can handle the events. So given the URL, you can navigate the user to exact screen you want it to, and perform some side effects as well. When the app is not running, you can take advantage of linking.getInitial URL methods. It returns a link that was used to launch the application. That would be for React Native. In order to get the links flowing in your React Native part of the code base, you first have to set up the native part of it. So starting with Android, I'll first give you a note on a little bit how it works on Android. So when you click a link on Android, an intent is created, something called an intent. It's a special kind of an event. And you can subscribe to that intent by specifying an intent filter. You can register intent filters in an activity or something called broadcast receiver. And activity, as Android documentation describes it, is a single focused thing a user can do. And it is one of the main building blocks on Android. Like React Native apps, ones you create with rn init and don't alter them largely, usually have one activity, which is main activity. So knowing that, in order to subscribe for these links, we have to create an intent filter for these links. It can be set up in Android manifest file in your Android part of the code base. You can place it in a block with activity declaration. If you have more activities, you create more intent filters. So example intent filter code would look like below. The important part is the data part. In the data tag, you specify what kind of deep link you want to listen to. In our example, we wanted to open Software Mention Academy / prefix deep links. For that, you specify the scheme. If you have more activities and more intent filters, you might want to have specific deep links open in specific activities. So you can go further and filter just for the webinars deep link, like shown in the example. Next step that I advise, and I think it is important, is changing the launch mode. What it will do, it will prevent reloading React Native state and make sure that you have single instance of your app running. What you have to do to change the launch mode, you have to add one property to your activity declaration, and it is Android launch mode, and you want to choose single task behavior. In order to support app links in Android, you have to set up another intent filter, and that intent filter has to be with auto-verify flag. This flag gets rid of a prompt to open in a web browser or your application, so that it leads directly to your app instead of letting the user to choose. This intent filter will look like this. There is the auto-verify flag, and I highly encourage you to provide all the data tags for all the paths that you want to support and be declarative and open about it. So specify only those that you want to support. Like bound with this auto-verify flag is the requirement to host an assetlinks.json file. And you have to host it under that well-known /assetlinks.json path on your domain. What it does, it actually verifies that you are the owner of the domain, or at least you are given permission to open your app when users click on the links registered for that domain. This file is downloaded on install and app updates, so you can't alter it. The user won't have it changed until after the install or update the app. And the file looks as below. Mainly, it has a package name, so your application identifier, and certificate fingerprint that the app was signed with. So if someone else has the code for your app but don't have the certificate, which you should protect at all costs, the link won't open immediately for them anyway. So apart from Android, I would like to explain a bit on iOS setup. It might be more steps, but they require a little bit less specialized knowledge, and it is much more clicking in Xcode than actually coding. So the first step is registering the URL scheme in Xcode. For that, you have to come up with an identifier. Apple advises reverse DNS string, so basically something like your app identifier. In my example, I set com.softwaremention.academy, and apart from identifier, you have to have URL scheme. So this is that URL prefix that you want the links to start with. So for example, software mention or SWM Academy, like in the examples before. Apart from this URL scheme, you have to make sure that you have React linking library in your port file. By default, if you initialize projects after React Native 0.60, it should be there, but just double make sure. You may have an older project just to prevent any native errors. If it wasn't there, perform pod install after you add it so that it is linked with your iOS project. So next step is a little bit of coding. You have to add some code so that the URLs passed are sent to the React Native in form of events or initial URL. So you have to open up delegate file, the implementation.m file, not the header file. And at the top, you have to import linking manager, and you have to override a method. It's a method with descriptor open URL options. Xcode will propose it to override it and create the descriptor for you. Then you have just to provide the body of that method. And in the body, you want to return React linking manager call. This is very similar in the descriptor as the method you are just overriding. And you have more services than just the React linking manager. So you have some additional services that might consume your URLs. You want to do that in order. So you want to open it only in the first one, and then the later ones don't receive that URL and are not triggered at all. So we don't call them. If the first one returns false, so that it can handle the deep link, you are passing that link to another call. So you can have some arbitrary service, and if it fails, you call React linking manager. If you want to support universal links, it requires additional project setup. First of all, make sure your application's app ID is registered on Apple Developer Portal. Next, you enable associated domains entitlement in your Xcode. After that, head over to the associated domains section in your Xcode project and add your domain that you own with applinks :prefix. It looks like in the screenshot. There are a few domains declared there. In connection to that, what you have to do to verify that you own the domain, you have to host a file on your domain that's similar to the one we had to do on Android. It's called Apple AppSite Association, and you host it under .wellknown/Apple AppSite Association domain. It's an abbreviation of AASA, like in the title here. The short for is used mostly in the community, so remember that. And what it does is specifies which paths are possible to open in specific app that is permitted to open that domain. And this file is fetched on app install and updates, so you can't change what paths are accessible in between installs. So when you change something, you should provide some update for your users so they can reinstall the app to have the new AASA fetched. And Branch.io has a tool for AASA validation. If you are not sure if you are doing it okay and it is right, like it should be structured, you can head over there and check if everything is as it should be. And on the screenshot on the right, this is probably taken from WWDC app Apple made. Actually, you can get more examples of AASA files, but going to some big companies' domains on the path that I just mentioned, so well-known Apple AppSite Association, probably companies like Twitter or Google also host their AASA there. Apart from AASA, you have to override another method. It's called continueUser activity. It's very similar to OpenURL method that we just implemented. And Similarly, like before, with more services, first come, first served, you have to make a fall through. So first the service, then something else, and lastly even something else. So you have backups for the handlers. It looks like in the screenshot. Xcode will again suggest you how to override it, and you return the call or return a Boolean value. Actually, Apple advises you to use universal links over URL scheme prefix links. They are advised. I'm not sure if they deprecated like URL scheme prefix links, but they advise to use universal links. And I think this is fair because they are much safer. They require you to actually own the domain or be permitted to use the domain. Okay, now I would like to tell you a bit how to handle deep links in your React Native code base. So let's first state the problem. You got the link into your application, and what you have to do with it is perform some navigation and optionally some side effects. And in the middle, what you have to do to go from the link to some action, you have to first parse the link to get an idea of what data is behind it. And after you know that, you have to pattern match it to match the action and side effects bundled with it that fit this specific data that was sent. And I would like to show you a solution that I came up with to solve the above problem. It will be a very simplified example, but I used an analogous solution on a production for one of our clients, and I think it is working pretty well. It might not be perfect, but it is worth considering. It might not fit your use case, but consider that one. There is more to it than I will just show you, but remember, that is just an idea. So first, I try to clean URLs. You have universal and URI prefix links, and you want to make them look and basically be the same. So what I usually do is I drop the URI prefix first, or just the protocol prefix and domain name, and they both look the same. Like in the example, we have webinars and question marks and query parameters in both cases. What I do next is the matching. Usually I can match by the path and drop the query parameters. So I choose just the webinars, and then I can throw it at the big switch true statement where I have several cases. And I might match based on this path like webinars. Optionally, I sometimes also pattern match on whether it has query parameters or path parameters at all. And lastly, when I know where the user wants to go, or more or less what the action should be, I parse the query parameters. I use Q as library for parsing query strings. And I parse, if there are path parameters, I usually parse them manually. So to give you an example of how that might look like in the code, you would have some handle URL function that takes a string as a parameter, a URL. So first, I clean the URL, dropping that prefix. Then there's a switch true statement, which matches something like, if this is the webinars link, I check if this starts with webinars. If that's the case, I check for query parameters. And when I have them, I usually throw them into the navigate function, which like in this example, navigates to webinar screen. And I also add to them some default parameters that I want to pass. For that, you can have a default case. So when the link that was passed into the app doesn't fit anything, you can fall back to something else. And I cannot forget to mention that there are already solutions. You don't have to implement anything custom. For example, React Navigation has one, and how it works is you bind screens with paths. So when you declare screens, you automatically, at the same time, assign a path that you want this screen to be opened with. It supports path and query parameters that are automatically parsed into screen parameters. I think it is limited when it comes to conditional navigation. So, for example, when you get the link, you are immediately navigated somewhere, and from there you have to do the redirect from the screen after you are navigated to it. With my solution, you can decide before. So you end up only in the screen without any redirects, the screen you wanted to open. But React navigation definitely shines when you use it on the web. So when you use your application and host it on the web as well, using React Native Web, for example, probably this is the better solution. After you have deep links implemented, it is wise to test them. There are a few ways to do that. Like first one is you can test them manually in CLI. For Android, you can open links with ADB tool, and the command is pretty long. You can find it on the internet, and it works for simulator or Android emulator, as well as the device if you have it connected through Wi-Fi, remotely, or through USB cable. On iOS, you can use SimCTL tool, and it works only in the simulator. It is a tool for controlling iOS simulator. You can test manually on device, and I have a pattern for that. I think this was working really well. So you have an HTML file with list of deep links in your code base. It is stored in your repository, like I did one. You can serve that file locally with any simple HTTP server package from NPM, and all of your team has access to all the links. It can be updated regularly by different team members, and QA team can also serve it, or you can serve it constantly, like from your master branch, so everyone can test the deep links in your local network, for example. You can also have them in your Notes app as well. If you are just a single person working on the app, you probably don't have to have them in an HTML file. You can house them in your Notes app as well. This will actually, the result is the same. To give you an example how it might look like, you would have like HTTP server package in your dev dependencies. You can add a script, an npm script, like serve deep links, and you do HTTP server and the path that you have your index.html file placed. And the index.html file with the deep links might look like below. So you have only the unordered list with list items of some anchor tags with deep links. And you can also provide the description so that they don't have to be raw, just the link and nothing else. You can run that on your local network. So you can take your device, go to the address like 192.168.143:8080 port. And the IP address might be different for you. It depends how your network is configured, but it is live on the same Wi-Fi as your laptop or computer, anything you host it on. Another thing is you can unit test deep links. For that, you have to strive to make the deep linking navigation logic easy to test, so make it separate and easy to take out of the rest, less dependencies. You can write test cases that expect what should happen after the link is passed. You can check if links are parsed correctly, so query parameters and path parameters returned are the correct ones that you anticipated. If your handling function has some external dependencies, like some context, whether the user is logged in or not, make them easy to mock. Try to do it as easy to mock in the testing so that you can check different configurations. All right, so I mentioned something about additional services. I would like to cover it now. So what you might encounter in your day-to-day work is something called mobile measurement platforms, MMP. I stumbled upon this term on the internet. And examples of such services is services like Branch.io, AppsFlyer, Adjust, Kochava, Firebase, Dynamic Links, and probably there are much more. What these services are about is mostly analytics. They can track your installs, clicks on specific links that you post, for example, on social media. They provide you with attribution functionality. so that you know where the user came from. For example, if the user converted from a Facebook ad or a Google ad or a Twitter post, and things like this. And they provide some custom deep linking solutions or deep linking extensions. And what it provides is it can make your user that don't have the app installed be landed on the App Store page with your app to be installed. And after the user installs the app, they provide a feature called deferred deep linking. So after the user installs the application, after you do some kind of onboarding, the app launches and stuff like that, user registers, you can land the user to the place, like you can run the deep link the user clicked. So after installing, they are landed, for example, in the webinars, deep linking webinar page, like today's one, just as in the example that we discussed earlier. And what they also provide is link unification. So you have something like a shortened link that serves all the platforms, not only the mobile ones, probably the web, and also desktops if that's applicable. So going back to universal or app links, it worked like user clicks the link, has the app installed, yes, open deep view in your app. If user don't have the app installed, you open the web page to the respective subpage. With these extended links, when the user clicks the link and the user has the app installed, it works just as it worked with other deep links that we today discussed. And if the user don't have the app installed, it will prompt the user to install it from the App Store, and later once again ask whether the user has the app installed. If yes, it will open a deep view in your app, just like if the user had the app installed. And if no, it will fall back to just a web page. I won't tell you how to integrate each and every service because they differ usually very largely. The differences between them are big. But I can give you some integration tips. I integrated at least 2 or 3 services like that, and I can tell you that you should be mindful when doing that. Like, don't do anything without thinking about it. I advise you to read the docs thoroughly, follow what they say, to not miss anything, because if you do that, you might find yourself with a bug that's really hard to debug. I encourage you to understand the code when you are copying and pasting it, even the native one. So when you copy and paste some Objective-C method call, try to read it and try to get the essence of what it does, so that in the future, when something fails, you probably will know where to search for it. Apart from that, check integrations with external services. Like with email configurations, there's something called email service provider. So a service that sends email campaigns to your users. Just check whether all the dependencies, all the configuration apart from your mobile app is right, because the problem might not be with your app itself. If nothing works, try reintegrating the service. Sometimes it helps to just start with a clean sheet and break everything to the ground and build it from ground up. And a bummer notice to you, some services don't have React Native SDK. So if you have any influence over which service you use, just make sure that the React Native SDK exists. And if it exists, if you have possibility to do that, just try to check if their SDK is have some quality in it, so that it is not a very bad integration with React Native. So like I mentioned before, there's a security note. Actually, there's a security page on Facebook docs, probably starting with React Native 0.63. Some of this or most of this information is also covered there. I encourage you to go there and check not only the deep links part, but first of all, I want to tell you that URL schemes have no global registration authority. So basically, you can create an app, and with this app, you can listen to any URI scheme, which in fact means that other apps can also hijack your URI scheme. So they can create an app so that when you have your campaign and you have your deep links, when the user clicks these deep links and have this malicious app installed, it can open in other app. So do not pass any sensitive user data through deep links because others can basically steal it. And we don't want to do that. Be careful which links you allow. Also the same thing. Other apps can open the deep links that you created. And be mindful how you parse deep links. I think there is some kind of an injection vulnerability. You might use some regular expressions or different things. So be careful with that. Try to limit and narrow down what you allow to be sent to your application. And thank you for your attendance and for listening. And right now, I will be open to your questions, if you have any. Okay, hello. Jasmine asked the limitation with React navigation. So I think the limitation with React navigation is, at least this is the reason why I proposed my solution and why I had to come up with it, is I think at least in React navigation version 3, when I was using it like a year ago, it was not possible to, first of all, have two same, like for one screen to specify two different paths. And I wanted to have that functionality and also have a way to decide before navigating to a specific screen. I wanted to decide, given the link, where the user goes, depending whether the user is authenticated or not authenticated, for example. So I wanted to immediately open login screen for users that are not logged in the application. They are sorted by votes. Okay, let's choose something else. Okay, I'm not sure if you see this, but I started answering. I can share the deck. That's not an issue. I can share this, so that's a no-brainer. So with twitter.com links, I think you can't write an app that will open twitter.com links. With the verification with the that well-known links, in order to host something on a domain, you actually have to own it. In order to change the AASA hosted by Twitter, you would have to probably contact Twitter and allow them, make them, persuade them that you should be allowed to open twitter.com links. So with universal links, at least on iOS, this is a limitation. You can't open a universal link for a domain that's not yours. I think on Android, you can do something like this, and it will ask you whether to open in Twitter or to open in different app or open in web page. But I'm not sure. Maybe if you verify that you own the domain, so that it will open only in Twitter and won't allow anyone else to open the app. But I'm not sure what will happen if you install only the fake Twitter app and not others. Yeah, so if you want to open to Google Play Store or App Store, I think I was implementing something like this. And I think there are deep links for that. You can search it on Stack Overflow. So yeah, you can probably redirect them here. I'm not sure, I can't remember what the URI scheme is for that, but it was somewhere public. You have to just copy and paste some ID or path where your app is on App Store, and it works like that. And you can prompt users to update your app. Okay, this one is good and has some votes. Is it possible to do deferred deep linking without making use of Firebase dynamic links or branch.io? In particular, attributing a sign up to a link that was clicked, e.g., to grant another user a reward, if the link they shared led to an install. I'm not actually sure about that one. Probably you would have to implement your own service. Like, this is always possible. If there are companies doing that, you can also do it yourself. But you can also somehow take advantage of query parameters. If that's not something that's secret, you can probably pass it here and maybe handle it in your application plus store it somewhere on your backend. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'm happy to discuss it with you. Just message me on Twitter. Okay. I'm not sure if this was answered. Can you repeat one more time what is the reason why you should not use React navigation? Limitation, I really hate long switch, something like this. So I think I already discussed that, but basically you have the ability to decide first and link next in order, instead of linking first and then redirecting the user. For this one, I'm not sure. I haven't used React Navigation version 4. I used React Navigation version 4. After 3, I only updated to 4, so I don't know. But probably you can ask somewhere on Stack Overflow. I highly encourage you to do so. I know the maintainers are making a great effort to support the community. Okay, if I try to share a deep link from my app to Telegram, Mail, and so on, I see something like my app blog, but my app is not clickable because it is not recognized as HTTP link. Depends on platform, but I was testing something like this. Make sure that you have it registered. But other than that, it also depends by where you post these deep links, I think. So if Telegram doesn't support custom prefixed URI scheme deep links, then you are doomed. You can't open them. But remember, you can take advantage of universal or app links. So if you have a web page and an application and a mobile app for that, just use them. They will be highlighted. And if you have the app installed, it will open straight in your application. I'm not sure what are the best tools for programming in Expo React Native. You always have to consider different solutions based on the problem you are facing. Let's say I have a QA version of my app and a production version, each with their own app ID. Is it feasible to have a different deep links for the different app IDs? On Android, I'm sure that is possible. You can have different URI prefix, and how you do that is with Android flavors, I guess. You can have different Android manifest overrides for different application scheme or application flavor. So if you have QA app, you can use steady app call / you can have software mention academy QA or software mention academy release or something like this. Okay, so that's interesting as I see it. Segment and AppsFlyer in the past. Have you integrated it? If so, did you go with the SDK provided by AppsFlyer or the device mode destination package that Segment offers? Oh yeah, there is something like an integration for AppsFlyer with Segment. I can't remember how we went around that and which one we used. I remember I had some issues with either, but can't remember what I went with. Like as before, you can hit me in the DM. Maybe I will remember that or check it somewhere. We can discuss this. Okay, so I think it is not possible because deep links are not working like HTTP requests. You are just clicking a link and you are not sending a request anywhere, at least how I understand it. So the limitation is your query parameters, I think. So it basically is just like you would, you don't have the post functionality, but you only have the get functionality here, right? This, like, you get the analogy. Okay, so why would a deep link register based on if an Android app is killed or backgrounded? I'm not sure if, I don't think that's the case, first of all. Maybe I'll try to once again explain something. Maybe you got confused by the part with React Native. So with a deep link, you can launch the app if it is killed, and you can also wake it when it is backgrounded. So I think when it is backgrounded, you would usually use the event listener in React Native, and when it is killed, the event listener didn't get a chance to be registered. So React Native provides a way to go around that, and provides a functionality to just see which deep link was used to launch your application. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I understand the question here, but are foregrounded push notifications with deep linking handled differently to backgrounded notifications? I think when you click a push notification, the app is killed or backgrounded. When the app is killed, it will, just like if you clicked the deep link. So it opens and you can get initial URL bound with it. When it's backgrounded, maybe the same way, but probably you will receive the event if React Native instance was already running and event listener was registered. But I would have to check. I'm not sure. I hope that at least this answer gives you a light in the tunnel to go further and search the answer. Okay. Why would a deep link register based on event notification is expanded, collapsed? I don't think that is the case, that deep links register based if it's expanded or collapsed. I'm not sure what's actually expanded and collapsed notification. If you can clarify that, that would be helpful. But I think you can have this notification laying for a month, and if you click it, the deep link is still here. If the app is killed, like I said, it will open and you can get the initial URL used to launch the app. Or if the app is running, you can click and you will get an event. So you can continuously receive different events. Okay, I think that's a good one. I think I messed it up a little bit in the presentation. So I mentioned additional services, for example, branch.io, or probably AppsFlyer. So you can have a few calls to different libraries. So you can have branch.io, AppsFlyer, if you have some backup in like branch.io and AppsFlyer is a backup, and you can have React linking, right? So different libraries work differently. I'm not sure if branch.io swallows all the links or not. Something that you would have to check with them or with their docs. Not sure how it works with AppsFlyer, but usually how it works, if branch.io swallows the link and returns true or returns yes in Objective-C, you have to assume that this deep link was already handled. So you should have an if statement whether the branch.io call succeeded, and or if statement if it failed, and call others if the previous call failed. So you call one, and if it fails, you have a backup plan in form of AppsFlyer. For example, if AppsFlyer fails to recognize the link or don't take it, returns no or false boolean, then you go for your last chance and try to call React linking. If it succeeds, great, you can return your function. If it doesn't succeed, you basically return no in this open URL function. At least that's how I understand it. And I think this is the same with Facebook SDK to open links. And I think branch.io has that in their docs. So there's an if statement, and in this if statement there is a call to branch.io SDK, and basically then if that fails, you go to call the Facebook SDK. Yeah, there is something. I see someone posted it. Yeah, I think this is something like this. Hope that answers it. All right, if you have some more questions, we are running a bit out of time, but you can post it. I can answer like 2 or 3 questions. And just to answer, I've seen people asking, will this be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded. And as Paulina mentioned in the chat, it will be uploaded to our website, but probably there will be delay. So you would have to wait a little bit to give us time so that it probably renders. I don't know if through this platform or someone has to produce it, and then it will be uploaded. All right, I see no new questions. So I think we can conclude here. I was really happy to have you listening to me speaking about deep linking. I'm happy if it answered some of your questions or made you curious about it. And thank you for your attendance in this webinar. And just as in the chat, you can always hit us up at Software Mentions Twitter account or mine Twitter account. So yeah, you can follow up with some questions. I will be watching you, and if you add me at Twitter, I will try to answer when I get a chance. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day or good night, depending on your time zone. And bye. See you on the next webinar. Maybe not me, but someone else.